Stayed on Jesus. Yeah, I woke up this morning with my mind stayed on Jesus. I woke up this morning with my mind stayed on Jesus. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah.
Where are we going, Hamilton?
We're heading to Mar-a-Lago for breakfast. We're going to do an interview there with Mike Lindell, CEO and creator, founder of MyPillow. It's pretty neat. I'd like to say it was something that I did or said, you know, maybe something clever, but I did nothing. Absolutely zero. The only thing we've done so far this year is wake up early, pray, read our word, worship, repeat. That's it. What do you think about today, Dad?
We were talking about earlier, footsteps are ordered. Let's see what God's going to do.
It says, go forth, preach the gospel, go out into the highways and the hedges, go out in the Mar-a-Lago, and give the good news. I can't believe it.
You never do.
Yeah. I don't know how that became a thing, but I guess it's just like a nervous thing I always say.
We're going to get you to believe it. That's our goal, is to get you to believe it eventually.
Faith is the moral to this story.
All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Don't Give Up. I'm your host, Hamilton Smith, and your co-host,
Bob Brandon.
We're a Christian podcast that stirs your soul and strengthens your faith. Join us as we explore powerful testimonies, the history of God's Word, and revealing His delivering power over addictions, depression, and life's trials. We'll celebrate success, learn from failures, and ignite your journey to rise in Christ's unstoppable grace.
We started this podcast because we both experienced God's goodness, mercy, and power to take us from death to life. Our heart is to encourage you that no matter where you are, don't give up. God hasn't given up on you.
All right, well, here we are at Mar-a-Lago, and I'm going to tell you guys a story. You see that flag over there? The flag, and you see how it's higher up, and it goes all the way. It's a big drop-off, right? Have you guys ever heard this story?
I think I might have heard it.
Okay, well, when the president came here, there's a limit of how far you can have the flag, that pole, how long the pole can be from the ground to the height. And he fought, West Palm Beach fought and said, no, I want it to be this high. And so then they said, he said, no, it's got to be from here to here. So he brought in, I don't know how many truckloads and made his own hill. So that hill is huge. And so that hill, I mean, it's really low there, that whole thing. But he filled that all in, and now the flag sits up as high as he wanted. Then they were fining him, I forget how much per day for a year. Uh-huh. And then they settled. He said, I'll pay it if you give it to charity. So it ended up, it was a win-win-win.
As usual.
But yeah,
Trump don't give up.
Yeah, I've stayed, I said in 2000, it's quite a story how I became a member. A guy actually bought me a membership from another country and said, I want you to have a membership because your president needs a friend. I had no agenda, and that was a pretty cool story. But yeah, I've stayed. There's like 100. This was built in 1929, I believe, and then there's like 100 and some rooms. But it's pretty amazing place. It's like it was built for such a time as this, because the president loves people. You know, hey, I don't know if he could be. Just let people come in. I mean, it's the most amazing thing that you have a president that's reachable. You know, so it's pretty cool. And it's you guys coming in today. I mean, he's not here right now, but there's still, when he's here, I mean, security is, you know, magnified even more. But anyway, well, it's be a good place to do the show today. And yes, you're right. Our president doesn't give up. I have two things. People ask me, how did you get through the last, I don't know how many years now of constant attacks? And I said, my faith in God. And I said, I have a mentor of the president of the United States and a friend where I'll go to him and he just doesn't give up. I mean, and the multitasking and I think we encourage each other. You know, there was a time, you know, the last 5 years, you go back to 21, 22, 23, 24, you know, it was just attack after attack after attack, because obviously they didn't want him coming back. And I remember saying, I'll say this here, we were sitting in the summer of 24, and it was just him and I sitting, I think we were in the office over here. Yeah, we were on the other side of the campus here. And he said, we were talking about, he goes, Mike, everything, they're destroying the country, you know, all this stuff. He goes, they're just destroying it. And I go, sir, these are actually good things. God uses all things for good for those who believe. And he goes, and I said, the people had to get their eyes open. I said, there's two buckets going on. I said, one bucket is your bucket of common sense. I said, it's these bad things and these attacks and all this nonsensical, crazy stuff, transgenders and men and women. I said, all this stuff, people are pouring into this bucket of common sense from both sides. And I said, the other bucket going on is a faith bucket for Jesus Christ, the biggest revival in history. I looked at him and I said, people don't look to God when things are going good, like December of 2019, when it was the highest consumer confidence in history. People just turned their back on God. They took it all for granted. And I said, they look to God when things are going bad. And I said, they're going really bad right now. And he looks at me and he says, but I don't know if we can get it fixed in 4 years. It's just so bad. And I looked at him and I said, sir, with God, all things are possible. And him working through you'll get it done faster and better than anyone. Yes. And he looked at me, he goes, yeah, that's right. That's true. And look what he's doing now, you know. And but anyway, let's go eat. Let's go.
And you're right. Biggest revival the world's ever seen.
Yeah, and I've told him too, I said, you know, well, I'll tell you in here. Good morning.
Rolling.
Welcome to Don't Give Up. Today we have a very special episode on site here at Mar-a-Lago with a very special guest, Mike Lindell.
Thanks for having me on.
Man, thank you. Seriously.
It's great to be on.
I can't believe this, Bob. Honestly, man.
You gotta start believing, man. We need to so working on it, Mike.
Yep, right on. Making a believer of it.
Yes, right.
Right on.
You know, everybody knows your story.
Which one?
Right. I don't think we have that much time here.
Right on. We just spent a couple hours over breakfast. Yeah.
Amazing, by the way. Thank you for sharing all that with us.
Yeah.
But like I said, everybody knows addiction, recovery, success, building a beautiful, great American company. But I want to start after that. When did you realize that the success that God had blessed you with, to the outside, didn't seem like it was protecting you?
Do you mean the attacks? When did they start?
Yeah.
Well, that's an easy one. You know, everybody, most people, if you do want to hear out there, I was an ex-crack cocaine addict, amongst other things. I quit everything January 16, 2009, by the grace of God. And I didn't think politics mattered at all in my life. I had never voted in my life. I I didn't know a Democrat from a Republican, a liberal from a, I didn't know a filibuster from a millibuster. And in the summer of 2000, actually it was the spring of 2015, I had a dream that I was going to be meeting Donald Trump. It was a very vivid dream. And I go, I had never watched The Apprentice, I think I went to back when I was my card counting days. I went one of his casinos once. That's all I really knew about him. But all of a sudden, then I had this dream in May of 2015, and a month later he comes down. Or May of 2015. A month later he comes down the escalator and says he's running for president. So I'm going, well, maybe that dream means something, right? So. A year goes by. I remember, it was such a vivid dream from God that, and I would get other dreams like that where they would come to fruition. And I remember being on a plane. I was actually going to do a movie called Church People in the summer of 2016, and I'm on my way to California. And I had bought a magazine about Donald Trump, and we got up to 10,000 feet, where back then, you had to hook your internet up on the plane for your phone. And I had my phone set at that time for when I got an email, it would do a little ding. And I remember putting that magazine down and going, okay, God, if I need to know. I mean, this is July of 2016, right? So and I was in the bulkhead of the airplane. And I remember that my phone, I go, God, I need to know right now. I said, this dream, am I supposed to meet Donald Trump? And all of a sudden my phone dinged and it's, Mike, this is Donald Trump. Would you meet me in Trump Tower in New York City? Blah, blah, blah. And I'm going, God? It was answered in real time, right? And I'm almost in tears. I'm going, this guy next to me can't speak English, and he's going crazy. And the flight attendant, you okay? Yes, it's a miracle. It's a miracle. Not that I was meeting him, it's that was answered in real time. And so that meeting came to fruition on August 15th, 2016. And I remember overlooking Central Park at 3 a.m, going, God, it was almost putting me in tears. Like, why? I felt like if that meeting didn't happen, it was going to change history. And it was just like, why me? And it was all this, why me? It just kind of overtook me there. Anyway, that next morning, it was 10 a.m. it was set. And I went over to Trump Tower, and they had told me, you're not going to meet him alone. And whatever you do, don't tell him you were a crack addict, right? And a series of events happened. If you read my book, these series that happened where people kept, it was like 10 of us are going to go in there, or 8 of us. And everyone kept getting pulled off, right? Like it's 10 minutes till we're going in. Pretty soon there was just me. But the day before I'd had this divine appointment, and I had met his longtime assistant, and she could see me way down the hallway. And she came up, she says, you don't have to wait for them to come on. She brings me around the corner, and you got to walk all the way up to his office. And it was just him and I, just like in my dream. And, wow. And I said, he says, Mike, you always wear your cross. Are you a Christian? I said, yes, Mr. Trump. And this is a divine appointment. And then remember, they told me not to say I was a crack addict. Well, about a minute into it, I said, I used to be a crack addict. And I went like that. But it was just like talking to a best friend, or like we had known each other. I was telling him I'm going to have this Lindell Recovery Network to help addicts and help them to Jesus. And he says, I'm going to stop the drugs pouring in from the border, close the border. But it was this businessman, I never met a president. Like I say, I've never got into politics. And I thought, wow, 45 minutes later, I said, he'd be the great president. He solved problems. It was like he'd have problem solution. He told me what he was going to do. And then he asked me all about making products here in the U.S. He wanted my opinion. He was an ex-addict from Minnesota. And he wanted my opinion on, what it was like to manufacture here. So I walked out of his office, and my wife and we went and talked to his employees. And you can tell a lot about a person, he had no agenda. He never asked me for money or nothing. I kind of walked around there and go, wow, he just wanted to hear from me. Yeah. And we went and talked to his employees, and everyone said the same thing. Great man, great leader. But interesting enough, everyone had a personal story that he had helped them out with no strings attached. It was amazing. And asked all these people. So I went back to Minnesota, and I was the media's darling. Then we had poured millions of dollars into helping addicts and helping your teen challenges, your Salvation Armies, your hurricane victims, you name it. That's what we did. And they would be, the media would be, how many more veterans you hired? How many more ex-addicts? And I was going to do a press release and tell them that I met Donald Trump, and my board, I remember my board sitting there and they go, half of them are going, you're going to ruin our business, half the business. I'm going, why? It didn't make any sense to me. Remember, I had never voted. I didn't know what are they talking about? Why would that matter that I got to meet this guy? You can't, that's doing your due diligence when you get to actually, and I wanted to put the word out. I think you'd be, great president. Anyway, they upset me by saying that. And they're all going, no, you can't do that. And I walked out in the hallway and my CMO, she came out and she goes, we didn't get all this way by you not listening to God. And even though I wasn't completely saved yet, I gave my life to Jesus on February 18, 2017. We can talk about that in a minute. But I walked back into the boardroom and I said, we didn't get all this way by me not listening to God. I'm going to do that press release. Well, I went ahead and did the press release, and that was the first time ever. I mean, it was bizarre. It was a tax. Mike Lindell is the biggest drug dealer we've ever seen. And I never dealt drugs in my life. In fact, I told you guys this morning, my dealer stuck up and he said he never dealt a drug in his life. He tried to rid Minneapolis of drugs by doing them all. But it's scary. It was scary. It was different. It was like I'm going, wow, they're going to ruin everything I built by telling these lies. And, I didn't. I was I had told everyone the truth. I had told everyone from get-go. I was a crack addict. I didn't say I had addiction issues. I was just, here's who I was. I'm not going to change them. I'm trying to help people from my story, from the past to use for good. But they, at that point, they attacked. They took my pillow from an A+ to an F with the Better Business Bureau. I was their darling. I was their, by the way, the corrupt Better Business Bureau, pay per play. But then what they did is I was their darling. They used my pillow because we had the best customer service in history, that we had an A+ rating, and you dropped it to an F overnight. The attacks just started. It was. I'm going, what? And then I'm going, okay. I went all in, and I went all. You start attacking me. I'm going, well, they must not want him to be president, but I know what I've seen, and I'm not going to back off just because they're attacking me.
Sure. And
then I went all in. I ended up the second debate and third debate, and I learned real quick what things were, so I didn't appear stupid, that somewhat I'm going, okay, I looked up Democrat, Republican, I'm going, or conservative, liberal, I'm going, wow, this is weird over here. They expect you to be this, like a non-believer, but all this craziness. I thought, doesn't even make sense. But I couldn't believe there was such a divide, that there wasn't like a mix. Well, I can be a Democrat that's, pro-life or something. It was like a line. It was, I couldn't believe it. I was very surprised.
When it started costing you something, what kept you from taking the easy road out and just being quiet like most people would have done and kind of run and hide? You doubled down. And
I doubled down. And I guess that's maybe it's my moral compass. You go back, there's a story in my book when I had, I fought for, I used to have bar and restaurants, not a good place for an addict, right? And I built up everything I had, but from the ground up. I was just an entrepreneur, never had any money from my parents' divorce when I was 7 years old, lived in a trailer court, but everything I did, I didn't use banks. I just, it was, hard work. And, but I got those bars and I fought for, it was our pull tabs, if you know what they are. They're like gambling thing the bars have.
Yes.
And I fought for law changes that would protect the casinos. The Indian casinos came into Minnesota first in the nation. And it was going to take all of it. It was going to wipe out the bars, the restaurants and stuff with what they were doing. But I fought for law changes that were common sense right. And there's a saying, you don't fight City Hall. And I lost everything by doing that overnight. It was like I lost every equity I had in the bar. 3 years later, or maybe it was 4 years later, everything I fought for came true, okay? And I got calls from around Minnesota from these bars and restaurants going, Mike, we know you lost everything, but we want to thank you for saving our industry, doing what was right. That's just the way I am. I mean, I just couldn't, So I guess it's, I had done my duty. I'm not going to back off and going, okay, it just didn't make sense to me that these attacks coming, and I didn't change. And the media was even torn, going, well, his pillows are good. If you looked at the attack media that came out there, they were really torn. You had your CNNs of the world going, hey, he's a big advertiser here. We used to be equal on CNN and Fox, everywhere. It didn't matter there was no politics involved, so to speak. So then, I went all in, and then you think where it kind of the media kind of put up, and the attacks kind of subsided there for that fall once they realized that I'm going to keep. You're not going to make me change. I'm still going to talk about this president that I believed in. Then you get into 1819, the summer of 2020, when I had a supplement.
And you're newly saved at this point.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Let's back to that. Let's back off to that. So I always use mathematics. If you read my book, What Are the Odds from Crack Addict to CEO? I use mathematics to prove that God exists. So you have a 1 in a million. This would happen to me all the time. If you read my book, impossible odds. So you'd have 1 in a billion. At my bar, we used to all talk and going, what happened to you this week? Mike, the odds of that are impossible, right? And by the way, after the bars would close, my buddies, I'd bring them all over, and I would be talking about these odds, saying I would be preaching them, because I always read the Bible whenever I was in jail. Usually I read Revelation of all things, right? Yeah. So I'm telling these guys about end times and stuff, but I'm processing it by telling them, and then they'd find the Lord the next day, and we'd lose them and go, Mike, will you quit? We're losing friends. Quit talking about Jesus, When I quit everything on January 16, 2009, I prayed to God that I would wake up in the morning and the desire would be gone. And I said, I knew I had this big platform. And they said, well, Mike, was that your bottom? I said, well, I made sure I didn't have any money left or anything. But to show this big comeback with God, all things are possible. I had that in my head, having no money or whatever. People at the bottom like that, addicts are very resourceful. So it's like I've been penniless so many times. I think in my book I said I've been everywhere from no forks in the street to 4 forkers that a property trying to figure out which fork to use. But I thought it was so radical that I had quit. When I had quit that day, that morning, it was because the desire was gone. That I thought that's when I got saved, that's where I felt that. And then through my life, it was God, show me more, show me more, show me another. There's all these mini miracles and major miracles in my life, getting your head cut off, or they're cartelling a family vacation, little things like that,
Right. That's all.
Wow. Yeah, that's all in the books. Yeah. But then you get up to 2000, like I say, 2015, when I seen that picture of me in my mind of the president. By the way, that picture was exactly the way I wrote it 2 years when I met him. That picture was taken. What I had drawn earlier, it matches. Exactly. And it's in the book. Well, anyway, things started happening in 2016 on that were impossible. What are the odds that this ex-crack addict is? When I walked into the White House, here, I'll give you an example. The first time I was invited to the White House, it was like a manufacturer's summit. There was like 10 manufacturers, and there was an empty seat here. And I go, who's sitting here? They said the president is. And we went live to the nation. Okay. Now, but as I'm walking into the White House, I got to tell you this part. I'm going, how did I even get in here? With my past and my record, right?
That's how we felt this morning.
Yeah. But I'm going, how did I even? How did I even get in here? And then when I was a kid I think it was like 1972, there's a very famous picture of Richard Nixon with Elvis Presley.
Yes.
Now I'm a big Elvis fan, huge, right? And I always thought back then, wow, you have to be Elvis Presley to meet a president. It wasn't the other way around for me. My first concert was Elvis, but that's what I thought. Wow, unless you're Elvis, you'll never meet a president, right? So as I walked into the White House, the second picture in was Nixon and Elvis Presley. That same picture. I go, wow, and here I am, years later, decades later. But I get in there and we go live to the nation. The president sits here and I'm here. It's live nation. Hundreds of millions of people. All my friends back home, my crack buddies who were back then, they're going, what is this crack addict doing on TV in the White House? Jesus is real, because this would be impossible.
Amen.
You follow me?
Yeah.
It's impossible.
What are the odds?
What are the odds? So as God kept bringing in the spring, all through from 16 on, he was showing me stuff like, okay, you want me to show you more? Here, this is impossible. I'm going, these are, so it led up to, in February, I went to it's called a drop zone. You have to be a veteran to be in there. And it's like a 5-day thing, and you find Jesus. And I'm not a veteran. So that was even divine how I even got invited. It was like a series of events. And my gal that I was with, Kendra, who I'm married to now, she kept up for years. Or she'd go, are you sure you're saved? I go, yeah, I believe in God, and
Right.
And she's good, but she had something I didn't have, and I wanted that, right? This personal relationship. And so I went into this drop zone, and one of the things I had is I went in there, and you'll see in my book, I couldn't talk to people. I had fear of speaking beyond belief. Okay. And in there, what I learned when I wrote my book, it's fear of rejection. I always thought, like back when I had my bars, if I was alone and I wasn't high on cocaine or drinking, and someone came in the bar and I didn't know them, I would say, here, let me know if you need anything. I'd be over here, act like I'm Dustin, and go, please leave. Because I thought I didn't like small talk.
Yes.
Wow.
But what it was is fear of rejection. It's very simple. You don't get rejected if you don't talk.
Right.
It was so simple, right? So I went into this drop zone on February 18, 2017. I gave my life to the Lord, and I forgave myself for something that had happened way back when. And I think that worked on my fear of rejection, this stuff that I had done in the 80s, and one thing in particular. And it was just like a weight lifted off me.
Amen.
That he forgave me for everything, right?
Yeah.
And lifted off. And 2 months later, I'm at US Bank Stadium in Minneapolis with 55,000 people, kids, mostly kids, 15 to 25. It was a Christian event, a Pulse event. And here, I'm leading them in prayer. I didn't know how to pray. Are you kidding me? The guy goes, Mike, lead us in prayer. Okay. And, but leading in prayer. And then, I told my story there. They had all these speakers, Christian speakers. I told 5 minutes of my story that he had in an interview thing. But back then I had to be interviewed. I couldn't do things off the cuff. I mean, it was like, but the 5 minutes. Anyway, a week later, we're at Valley Fair, this amusement park, me and my granddaughter, and we're at this amusement park, and all these kids are coming up to us, 20 years old, 18 years old, and they're going, I got saved, your story, I got saved. They were just, it was all about that. Wasn't
that amazing?
It was amazing. And at that point, finally my granddaughter goes, he's my grandpa, we got to go and rise him, but I was just taking this in because, one of my favorite proverbs is Proverbs 3:5-6, trust in the Lord with all your heart, lean not on your own, lean not on his own understanding, and always acknowledge him, and he will guide your path. Yeah. Well, I was going down some bad path, but I knew then that this was my path, my path that I was going to go on by telling my story. It would bring people, people that have been there, and not, you sit in classes and going, you got some guy who went to school for 4 years to be a counselor for addiction going, I've forgotten more about addiction than you'll ever know. And I was in so many secular treatment centers, and it didn't work. And but anyway, But
I think that people that hear because you are so transparent. I've sat with you for hours.
Right.
I love it. When I witness to people, I just let it all hang out.
Right.
And they see it, and they feel, because I can't help it. I'm a big crybaby.
Right.
If I'm going to talk to somebody about Jesus and tell them a little piece of my testimony, give them John 3:16,
right.
I can't help it. I'm crying. They're crying.
Right.
And they feel the love. I love you because Christ first loved me.
Right.
So
absolutely.
That's amazing. I think people should, anybody out there listening, and you're trying to help somebody, to be transparent. You know what I mean? Just like.
Oh, yeah. You can't minimize it. And when I went on, when I did come out with my book, then I was told way early on, like, don't don't tell people you're a crack. Just say you had addiction issues, right? And also I always wear my cross in all my commercials. Probably the most seen cross in history. I had been on TV 4 million times, but I wasn't posing. I just wanted to be that person. Yeah. I really wanted to be that person. So I'm wearing my cross. And when I was this is interesting. When remember I told you about the people after the bar closed, I would tell them about the Lord, whatever. Now remember, I'm still not there yet. Back when I was the only person taking phone calls, I didn't have a call, so I'm taking orders, right? And I get these people that's seen on TV wearing the cross, and I would have Christians call me up, or there's some Christians saying, you're wearing your cross, just so product, blah, blah, blah. And I'm going, no, that's who I am. I said, I'm not doing it. I said, and what I would do is I would send pictures of me in a crack house wearing the same cross. So I said, I'm not doing it for you. I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it for me. And then if I had the other section that would call up would be these atheists, these non-believers, and they're calling up going, and they're arguing. Then I start arguing with them about Jesus, not telling them a pillow, and they would be saved. They'd end up getting saved, and I'm not saved. There, take that. How do you like me? But it was interesting. But when I came out with when we talk about treatment for any addiction, one of the things you talk about secular sinners, they try and shame you into quitting. Then all of a sudden you get out. You don't have the Lord. You get out and you're like a ticking time bomb. You're waiting for, Uncle Ray died and can you blame him? He went back to drinking. It's not like a country, right? It's not like a country song gone backwards. Your truck's not going to start. Your kids don't come running back. Your dog doesn't jump up and love you immediately. And that's what they will paint this picture of shame on you. And then that's why the faith-based centers, your Teen Challenge Salvation Armies, where they have an 85% success rate and above, secular is 5% below. It's fail. And one of the things I came out with, and this is my Lindell Recovery Network.org, when I came out with this, people couldn't get it. And what I did was, what people couldn't really, if I had someone there telling their story, and they're saying, you know what? I ran over someone. I got these DWIs, and it might be so bad that I, as an addict, it's either I'm not as bad as him, or I'm worse than him. They can't relate. It's a weird thing that you really can't relate perfectly, right? Well, what I did is, one thing that people can know, that where they know you've been there, is the commonality of whatever the addiction is. Sure. So if you go to Lindell Recovery Network, what I did was thousands and thousands of videos where you put in your drug of choice, and your age. So I'll do crack cocaine. So I stick in there, Mike Lindell, this age, and my drug was crack cocaine. Now, as I'm telling this, what I'm doing, I'm not going to tell you my story, what happened to me, my consequences. I'm going to tell you what I didn't like about the drug or the addiction. I'm going to do crack right now, an example. What I didn't like about crack, I didn't like carpet farming. I didn't like not having any baking soda, and I had to run it or go steal a spoon out of a restaurant. I didn't like tweaking out windows. Well, unless you're a crack addict, you don't know what I just said. But if you are a crack addict, you're going, he's been where I've been. Right. You don't have to say any more of that. Right. You have binge drinkers and you have maintenance drinkers for alcohol. So whatever the drug is, meth or heroin. What I like about heroin, if you're a heroin addict, I didn't like my sticky hands. I didn't like going into a gas station, have to steal a little piece of tinfoil. Everybody's done that thing with that drug. Maintenance rate, you could do it for every drug. So we did that. Now you relate, whatever your addiction was, you're relating and you're flipping over going, everyone's the same. And you see these people have been, your perception is they've all quit.
Yep.
Okay. Now you click through and you get to the next part of the platform. And now you're going to find out their story. Why they quit. They're not going to say, but they're going to say what the answer is, how they quit. Well, what do you think the answer is? Every one of them is Jesus. So now you're sitting there on the site and you're going, oh, come on, there's got to be another solution. There's got to be another solution. That's great. It is saving more people because you're drawing in the addict. And by me being the starting that, here's, everybody knows, sees me out there and they go, wow, he was a crack addict. So you could tell so-and-so about the Lindell Recovery Network and that Mike Lindell's there, he was a crack addict. The addict's going to go there. They all have phones, right? They're going to go there and they're going to be curious. And it's like, I'm telling them they can't say, I don't know what I'm talking about. Now, maybe I don't know what I'm talking about, a heroin, I didn't do it, or meth or whatever, but those guys do. And they all say the commonality. You have to have that. It doesn't matter his consequences because you're already having them, but you know he's been where you've been. It's so important. It's like a hope match. I call them hope matches. In my book, I call them hope matches. It gives you hope that you can beat this. But then you see the answer is Jesus, 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 Jesus. So the whole platform it's like when I tell you my pillow is going to give you quality sleep. The bonuses are it's made in the USA and a 10-year warranty. You can wash and dry it. Well, the big win is getting to Jesus. Getting off your addictions, that's just a bonus.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, that's as a ministry, that's what we're most interested in.
Right.
It's like when the cameras is off and the media's gone and and you're alone
Right.
with yourself. Like where are you at with what are you saying to the Lord to keep you from quitting and staying true to all this with everything that's happened to you in the last 4 or 5 years?
Well, for me, I've never, I did have that prayer where I never had the desire again. You could put from that day, from that next, that's why it was so radical. God did a miracle to me. Maybe it isn't for everybody, but I never had the desire again. You could have dropped me in a crack house right next to you and it wouldn't have mattered. And I could walk in anywhere. I mean, I remember back then, the first ones that knew that I had quit were who? My dealers. And they had done that. They had done an intervention on me a year earlier. They had done an intervention. I mean, the story they knew I gave them hope. I was their hope, So for now I guess I never think of it that way. I just think that, what gets me through my company's been the most attacked company in the history of the world. I've been probably the second most attacked person probably ever next to the president. Yeah. And, they said they just did a thing the other day back I was at one of the lawsuits with one of the voting machine companies. And the last thing their evil lawyer said to the jury was, now you all know Mike Lindell had a net worth of over 100 million just a few years ago, and now it's minus 10 million. But we're asking you to give us 60 million for him calling us traitors, and if that bankrupts My Pillow and Mike Lindell, so be it. We need to send a message to the country that you don't put out disinformation about our elections. So to deal with that and then going, and you're hearing all this stuff getting poured on you daily. So I mean, it just every day. I get in the Word, and I guess it's God getting me through that. But I want to say this because if everybody out there remembers, so you can look it up. And right before the China virus, can you say that on your show?
Yeah.
So right before the China virus, the president, I was invited to the White House to speak. Remember, from the Rose Garden. Yeah. Now the series of events, I don't have time to tell it. There is no way that I was going to be on that stage alone. And what I wrote and said, they had strict rules against it. You weren't supposed to do that. They were remarks you had to hit pre-approved, right? And anyway, if you remember what I said a nation had turned its back on God. We had taken God out of our schools, and we need to pray for God's grace and get back in the Word and spend time with our family. Well, that went the number one story in the world for 2 weeks straight. Yeah. Mike Lindell talked about God, and the president, he had covered it, so they knew that he didn't know I was going to say that, the way things went down on that stage, if you ever get a chance to watch it. But when I said that, people, if you go back over the last 5 years, people kept coming up to me as our country's getting destroyed and all this evil pouring out, men and women's bathrooms and transgenders, and the most nonsensical, evil stuff that you could ever imagine. And people coming up to me, they go, Mike, this doesn't feel like grace. This doesn't feel like grace. What's the matter with you? And I said, and I prayed that Donald Trump would be put in, or I prayed for this, and it didn't happen. And you know what I tell them? I said, oh no, you're in the best time in history to be alive. This is God's grace. What is happening now, I said, let's talk about your prayers, I told him. Those are reactionary prayers. I said, when you're praying and you don't see it coming true, I said, I used to have those prayers in jail. I go, please God, let me out of here. I'll never do it again, right. Blah, 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 right? Good, yeah. Those are reactionary prayers. And I said, I tell him, I said, now listen very closely. It might not be God's will or God's timing. Okay. Amen. And I said, where is God's will? God's will is in the Word. And if you get in the Word, which I do every day, you get in the Word, guess what? You can be proactive in prayer, and they line up beautifully. So you can have an overall picture that no matter how bad things get that particular day, and go, you can see out and go, and I've said it many times, we're going to get to this beautiful place. I've told the president this many times as we've spoke about God and where the things are going. And I said, I always encourage him, and I encourage others. I said, we're going to get to this beautiful place. And you're going to look back and say, everything had to happen, not only on God's timing, okay, but even the bad things, as we know, God uses all things for good for those who believe. But in the meantime, let's say I'm wrong, okay? Let's say I'm wrong. I've told people this, as our country was getting destroyed and all this stuff. Well, you know what? People look to Jesus when things are going bad, not when things are going good. So it's a win-win. If I'm wrong, people are pouring in. We're the greatest revival for Jesus Christ in history. Yeah. And this is a win-win. All as believers, we go to heaven if it's the end. Or you're going to get here and God gives us grace a second chance.
Amen.
And to bring our nation back to God and our children back to God. And
Amen.
That's where we're at.
Yep. That's exactly where we're at.
Right. Did I nail it?
You nailed it right. I mean, right on the head. You know, I struggled with addiction. And I went to Arkansas to it's called the Disciple Center.
Right on.
And the man who runs it, we call him Uncle John.
Right on.
And Uncle John took the time and would just listen to you.
Right, right.
And when it was his time to talk, I'm telling you, that guy could talk from 7 in the morning until 1
right on.
in the morning.
Right.
He was like Paul,
right,
you know?
Right. He didn't have fear of rejection.
No, he didn't. But he was also there where I was. So my drug of choice was alcohol.
Right.
You know, and he struggled with that.
Right. So there's exactly what I'm talking about. That's your hope match.
Yeah.
You call them hope match. You have to other people, and that's a drug crossover too. If I sat here and I'm in a thing and I got a heroin addict trying to tell me how bad it was, I'm over here. I was a crack cocaine. I'm not relating.
No.
And I can't relate to their consequences either. You know what? I got so low, like I say, I ran over someone on a bike, whatever it would be. You know, my family deserted me. I was homeless. I had to eat out of whatever. Yeah. And you're going, good for you, Special K. I'm either worse or not as bad. Yeah. You know what I mean? You can't relate to that, but you can relate to all they have to say is the commonality of the drug. I did crack cocaine, and one of the things I didn't like about it, everybody has those things. If God made it, if you had drugs and stuff that didn't have, and addictions that didn't have consequences, we'd all be doing it. If water tasted good, and it was alcohol, he had made alcohol taste bad. If it tastes good, people would be dying right now.
Right.
You got to think of things like that. These things, these addictions, and it can be any addiction. Someone that's overweight and has an eating disorder, she needs to hear from people that made it through.
Yes.
And the answer for every one of them is Jesus Christ.
Amen.
It's so simple. And it was really hard for me one of the hardest things I had around the country with Teen Challenge and stuff. I wanted stories from all these addicts that have made it through with Jesus, but I just wanted them to say what they didn't like about the drug. But all of them, well, don't you want to hear my story? No. That was the second part, how they got, saved.
Yeah.
It wasn't about, hey, I got done. And it doesn't mean to find Jesus that you come back and your family loves you, your truck start, everything's beautiful. No, that's not the way it is. That's called faith. You got to stay in your faith.
Amen.
You don't give up. There you go. Now you know where you guys got it. Don't give up. This is why it's so, it's important people realize when you talk about relapse and stuff in any addiction, it's because they don't have Jesus.
Yeah.
There's nothing there. That drug was there, that addiction, whatever it is. And when something happens, it could be someone dying, they couldn't get a job, whatever that is. Their wife wouldn't come back or their husband wouldn't come back.
Yeah.
And you said a lot of them, you're going in there to going, I'm going to get it all back. I'm repenting. I'm really quitting this time. And it doesn't work.
Nope.
Well,
I like what you touched on, though. You touched on two things that are key components, I think, in surviving and spiritually is praying and reading your word.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And, when I was in Texarkana, I woke up early, I prayed, I read my Bible and I worshiped, repeat. And then one day I realized I knew I got saved because my prayer changed.
Right.
So reading the Word of God and my prayer changed.
Right.
It went from forgive me, I'm sorry, help me, save me, to thank you. I started remembering my testimony.
Right.
All the different things. And we don't have enough time for that either.
Right.
But all the things God saved me from in my life.
Mm-hmm. Those miracles, those 1 in a million, 1 in a
Divine
billion.
interventions.
And when does it become a miracle?
Divine
where people
appointments,
see
everything.
That, Absolutely.
After
Yeah.
everything you've been through, now you've stepped into running for governor of Minnesota. Why go into public service instead of trying to just protect everything that you have?
I've spent the last 5 years being, I'll say, second most attacked company in history. And imagine a ship of my pillow, a ship, and it's getting blown full of holes every day. There's a thing called Arctic frost. Our own government under Biden administration attacked my pillow and 92 other 9 senators. They just wanted me to shut up and quit talking. And so I spent the last year and a half, 2 years probably, where every day, here's my pillow, just a shadow of itself, of its one self. But everyone's going, just declare bankruptcy and walk into the sunset, Mike, blah, blah, blah. And I'm going, no, to keep that alive and right. And that fails, and then people lose hope, But to keep that, I had to get this summer. I told our president, I said, I'm thinking of running for governor. And he didn't say much. He was just kind of okay. And I said, Kendra, that's my wife, Kendra. I said, we're going to pray about it. But I said, I can't do it unless the Lord gives me a security with my pillow. And it wasn't secure. It hasn't been. It's been like, we're sinking over here. Right the ship, right this. But during that time, I built Lindell TV, built the Cause of America, all these things. So you have all these parallel tracks that you're doing. It takes up, so much time. The media would say, if you could turn it back now knowing you've lost everything, would you change? I said, no, I would double down. I would do it the exact same way because I know the end game. God wins. Yeah. And anyway, it was like a little after Thanksgiving, we were praying, and I said, I told my wife, I said, God's saying to run and that my pillow is going to be okay because I got to go 100% all in. Yeah. In anything I do, I'm not going to go 10% over here, this, and that's what God wants me to do. And then, as you know, about a week after that, all the fraud comes out and everything starts opening up. It's like, wow. Now I can see.
You're making certain people very nervous.
But it's like, can they turn up the attack more? Maybe, but I don't know how. I mean, it's been, do you get used to it? And does it bother you? There's times wake up, you got with my pillow and that with the finance, it got very hard every day when something else and these things kept happening and we didn't know why. And then we felt like getting debanked and all this stuff. And then we find out later our own government was behind it. So it explained all these craziness. I go, what are the odds? I'm praying to God. I go, I'm just figuring it's the devil, just evil. These things that happened just this morning as we were walking here from breakfast. Something happened it's catastrophic right now, but I can sit here and it involves our bank. And I sit here with a peace going, okay, I get why this happened. You don't want me going on this show.
What does that, like the pressure and everything you've been through up to this point, how does that turn you into the leader that you could be for
well, that, people said in Minnesota, they go, the bad media, or they go on, Mike Lindell comes with baggage and he's branded with Donald Trump. Well, Donald Trump came with baggage and he won.
That's true.
The baggage I have are the receipts. I know where everything's at when you talk about our election. That's what they're talking about, baggage. I went on CBS the other day in Minneapolis, and she was ready to attack me, and she says, well, Mike, isn't my pillow bankrupt? How are you going to run for governor? I said, we're not bankrupt. Who told you that? That's your own lies. You guys lie more here than... I said, you're almost as bad as the Star and Tribune, the worst paper in the country. A lot of other people would argue that theirs is worse. But anyway, then she says, well, you lost $5 million on your evidence, the $5 million challenge. I said, no. The 8th Circuit here in Minneapolis overturned that, and they said Mike was right. And she goes, well, I don't believe that. So I showed her the art. This was live TV. So she did. I said, Isme, you didn't do your due diligence. I said, you should. They said, that's really bad reporting. When you come on here and accuse me, it was, and did I love it, throwing it back in her face? Like, no, it's like, it didn't, I don't have that. For me, I'm very forgiving. People that attack, every reporter in this country that has attacked me and has my direct number, they'll call me up. I'll filibuster. They're on the phone for an hour. I'll probably bring up Jesus. I'll give an example. When the FBI, remember the FBI, the DOJ, and the IRS, they were hired, or they were told by the Biden administration to attack MyPillow, Mike Lindell, and all these senators. Well, you all know when my phone was taken by the FBI, it was the number one story in the world. You remember that? I don't know if you remember that. You remember that? Well, anyway, it was a Hardee's restaurant in Minnesota, coming back from a duck hunting trip, and I pull into Hardee's with me and my buddy, and we get surrounded by these unmarked cars, and they didn't look like the ones here like Secret Service. They're just random cars. Now this is at 12:30. I told my buddy, hey, I said, just stay there. And I peek out my thing. We're up against the wall by the restaurant there. I go, who are you and what do you want? The guy goes, FBI. And I said, I don't believe you. Show me a badge. He shows me a badge, and I said, I still don't believe you. He showed me your badge, and they showed me a badge. I go, well, bad guys probably wouldn't carry more than one badge, right? You know what I mean? So I go, so it's power of numbers, right? So I pull over, and they start in, and they go, we're not here to arrest you. We just want to ask you some questions, blah, blah, blah. And now crowd's gathering around, and my buddy's shaking like a leaf or whatever. I said, can he sit in there? I said, and they go, we don't mean to scare you, whatever. I go, you ain't scaring me. I said, my buddy, I said, I want to be arrested, because I wanted to be arrested to go on Fox and tell about the voting machine, right? And they go, no, we're not going to arrest you. I said, I've been calling those January 6th, even though I wasn't there. I want to go talk before that committee. And they go, Mike, we're not those FBI guys. I go, well, call those FBI guys. I'm just truing them out, right? Because I still don't know where they're going. So now an hour goes by, and finally the guy goes, but we do have to take your phone. I go, you're not getting my phone. He goes, no, we have to take your phone. And I said, I want to call a lawyer. He goes, you can't call a lawyer. And I said, well, then you're going to arrest me. It's a win-win. Yeah. And he goes, fine, call your lawyer. So I get my lawyer on the phone, and he reads this thing, and he goes, Mike, give him your phone. And I was kind of like this, right? Yeah. And so they take the phone, and they give me a stack of papers this big, and it says, this is part of an ongoing investigation. If you have the right to tell people about this, but we would rather you didn't. And if you do, tell the Attorney General's office in Colorado, whatever it was. Well, anyway, that night, by the way, I went on my show. I said, everybody plug your ears. I got something to tell the Attorney General in Colorado. So I plugged my ears. I said, they took my phone, blah, blah, blah. And I said, I'm going to tell the world. I said, okay, everybody, lift up your ears. but anyway, those FBI guys sat there. Now, they had followed me down duck hunting all the way to Iowa and back all morning long. And I said to them, I said, you guys, so you could have just came to my office. I said, but you went and did that. I said, now you do know I outshot my buddy here 6-2 in ducks, right? That was right validation. But anyway, so I'm joking, but I'm going, do you guys realize what you did here? I said, with my past, if you'd have done this at night, I said, I would have bashed through you with my truck. I wouldn't have hesitated. We had guns in the back, from hunting, open, whatever. I said, I would have bashed through you. It would have been a high-speed chase. I'd have been looking for a real cop. And I said, this is disgusting what you did here. And I went on him, and I said, then I told him about citizens in Colorado. They had broke into them while they were having breakfast, bashed their doors in, took their daughter. One daughter was 14 years old, out in the yard in their underwear. And none of them getting arrested. And I said, you guys should be ashamed of yourself. That one FBI goes, Mike, we're just doing our job. I said, your moral compass is gone. And then I started talking about Jesus. Yeah. So I'm a half hour witnessing to these FBI guys out there. And then the one FBI guy goes, I've been doing this 30 years. And he goes, Mike, we got things to do. And I go, oh, you do, huh? You can interrupt me here. But he's shaking his head, here witnessing to these guys. But it's just how everything's been tilted, with you have good people that are out there, but they've been so brainwashed and stuff, and we've got to break through that. And these are the times we're in where you can't, if you're a pastor, if you're evangelist like you guys do, if there's people out there, if you can't evangelize now and get people to the Lord, you're in the wrong business.
Right.
It's the perfect time in history.
Yeah.
This is the grace we're in.
Yep.
We have the opportunity. If Donald Trump, if they'd have put him back in, we'd have not only lost our country forever, but we were getting boiled like frogs. And we'd have slowly been, the evil invasion. This is a battle of evil and good of biblical proportions. We're in that time.
Yes.
It's the most important time probably in history, and we'll see. But we know God wins in the end. Like I said, it's a win-win.
Chapters. What would you say that your chapter now is that God's prepared you, looking back, for this moment? All the stuff you've been through.
When my book ends, that's a good question. When my book ends, people have read it, said it's the most. They'll read it cover to cover. It takes them 9 hours and 9.5 hours. They don't put it down. They go, I've never read a book like that. People tell me, I read a book maybe once a year, and if I do, it takes me months to read. It's cover to cover because you go from getting your head cut off in Mexico with cartel wars to all these different things that happened in the book, and you see these many miracles and this incorrigible guy moving along the path. Show me more, God, show me more. All those experiences prepared me when that book ended in 2017, when that says to be continued. From there till now, it's like living inside the biggest spy movie or you would ever seen in history. You may take that and magnify by 100, and maybe even more, the things you can't believe. That's why I ended up coming to the Lord. I'm going, okay, you can't make this up. This would be impossible. Just even being friends with the President of the United States and confidence, talking back and forth with him about anything. And and to have that, where I've come from, you got to realize I had to get over not talking to people, but to talk to. He's easy. That was good training with the president, but all these other people, you see him, and I used to be intimidated with a guy wearing a tie. I mean, seriously, I would be like, they're better than me or something. Just it was so intimidating. But to be able to know all the players out there now that are in the politics. I mean, I have their personal phone numbers, right? Where I can just to have that. Maybe the influence, God's influence, you know what I mean? It's like, and I do it in a way I don't call them, I'll talk to them, but it's the way, here's my example, but when you say not giving up,
sure.
Everybody would give up. If I didn't have the Lord, come on, I would have, I don't know where it would have been, but it sure wouldn't have been making a stand and not budging 1 inch,
You always said the pillow was never the mission.
No, the pillow was the platform.
Yeah,
the pillow was the platform, which I'm going to tell. If I do, I have time. I got to tell a quick story.
Please.
So I'll tell you a quick story. This is when I was still on drugs, and it was back in this gal. I met her at a trade show, a home show, and a Christian lady, and she had put me on this Channel 6. This Channel 6 was a little public access station, and she had seen me and. She called me up. She says, Mike, will you come down to the studio? I said, yeah, because I was going down there to buy drugs anyway in Minneapolis. So I went down there and my dealer wasn't ready. So I get in and I looked at the studio first and she goes, we want you to go on live right now. I said, I can't. I got to come back because I needed the cocaine, right? I said, I got to come back and, I'll be back in a half hour. No, I want you on right now. And I went on and I was so nervous. It's the most discombobulated thing you've ever seen. But I was genuine. I was still genuine, even though I didn't even know the camera's on. I'm over here looking, it's crazy, right? But it was genuine because that's who I am, this transparency. Now, and I have my cross on. I always wore my cross, even in the crack house, right? So anyway, they would play this in the middle of the night when she needed filler. She would run that show and I would get sales. She put my website up, my thing. So it was my cell phone, right? And this is back in 2008. So in 2008, this would air usually in the middle of the night, and I would get phone calls, and I would get this little blast of people buying pillows, right? I'm still up. I'm on cocaine, right? I'm awake, and taking orders, going, this is great. Well, one night, and this is when it had turned to crack in the early 2000s, but I'm doing cocaine. It wasn't crack. I mean, by my computer, I had lost one house. I lost a 20-year marriage. I mean, it was out in this woods. This is in my book too. And And at 8 o'clock, and I would always go to this one site, it was about crack, how to get off crack. But I was glued to this site. There was a Christian guy that did it. Anyway, that was called the Devil's Candy. So I would just be stuck on that site, and I'm doing lines. And now my phone rings, okay? This is 8 o'clock at night. And this lady goes, "Are you the guy on Channel 6? And I said, "Yeah." And she said, "Well, I'm not going to buy a pillow, but the Lord told me to call you and say to never give up, that you're going to be provided a platform, that you're going to get a platform, and your voice." And she said the word platform, and that your voice is going to be so important. And she goes, "I don't know why, but God said to call you and then to pray with you." And I said, "Sure, go ahead." And so she's praying, and I'm muting it and doing lines, so she can't hear me,
Wow.
And so now we get done. That's about maybe a half hour, 15 minutes, half hour. And then about 2 hours later, okay, another lady calls. Now I know these people. Now this lady owns a boutique in Minneapolis. She calls up. She says, "Hey," she says, is this that young man from TV or whatever?" And she's a little older. And she says, I said, "Yeah." She goes, "Well," she said, "I just wanted to call you. God told me I need to call and pray with you, that something big is going to happen, and you should never give up." And I'm going, okay. And for me, these things, these
with you.
Yeah, but this stuff, other people would say, "Oh, this is hard to believe." Stuff like this would happen all the time that was so bizarre, both evil and good, right? So I didn't think it was a prank by my friends or anything, right? And nobody had that number but Channel 6. So this lady, we talked, and she prayed for an hour and a half. I mean, I had nothing better to do, and I would mute, do another line of cocaine, blah, blah, blah. And now, 3 a.m, we said goodbye to her. I'm still looking at this website and doing this. And about 3 a.m, the show had come on, okay? And this guy calls me up, and he goes, "Is this guy on TV?" And I go, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, I'll tell you what, I don't believe in God." And he goes, "I keep getting these dreams. I'm supposed to call you up and tell you what you're doing is to tell you you're supposed to keep going." He goes, "I can't stand you." And he goes, I hope my dreams stop now." And he slams the phone down.
Oh my!
So he was,
gosh.
it was amazing, right? So now it doesn't. The last call was at 8 o'clock in the morning. I'll never forget it.
Give me a break.
Phone rings again. Okay. This lady gets on the phone, and I answer it like this. I said, "I know you don't want to buy a pillow, but you want to pray." She goes, "How did you know?" And I go, "It seems to be the thing tonight. It seems to be the thing tonight." It seems to be the thing. Then I get a call. I had a recording, the old-fashioned recordings, the old-fashioned recording, the plate player. And I played that. Nobody knew that number. And I played that, and it was like a monotone voice that said, "This is a message from God. The things that have happened to you are going to," it's like something like the things that have happened to you are going to give you the strength to go through one of the worst periods of your life coming up. And I had a glass of whiskey in my hand, and I dropped it out of fear because I knew that mess, and it just shattered on the ground. And it was true. What happened over the next month was absolutely unbelievable. Yeah. But that's
Yeah, it was one to see because I know the microphone and the platform you had. You've used that now for Christian storytelling and this type of thing. Where have you? You're not one that plays it safe. So where do you see that sort of storytelling for the church, for Christian?
Well, I think right now, because I'm in the public eye now running for governor, there's a big Trojan horse here that we're fighting, and that's Sharia law, that's coming in. And I think God's put me in. Minnesota was the Trojan horse for that. And I think that's going to be a big battle. And I think it's being right. You can't think right now what's out there. Where's the tip of the spear of evil? Minneapolis. I mean, that's where it is. It's all there, and it's been there. Well, we would have. I could tell you the records we have there. The most practicing witches per capita in the United States. There's all kinds of records there. You could look them up that Minneapolis had. It's this beautiful city, but it's where evil just congregated to blast out from there. And so it's putting me right in that battle. And I think it's more, am I going to have time to go around like it was before and speak at big events at churches and stuff? No, I think my story tells that. And like we were just talking before, getting, I'd like to do a documentary or, movies can really get it out there, but I'm living it right now.
Yeah.
It's hard to do it when you're living it. We got to get to that point. And people say, well, Mike, what if you don't win? Well, God put me in this to run. Did he say I was going to win? I'm not going to tell you that part, I haven't got definitive either way. When I ran for RNC chair, he said run. He didn't say I was going to win. In fact, but the stuff that came out of that manifested out of that, which we'd have too much time to tell, was amazing. And I could see that as it unfolded. I wasn't disappointed that I didn't win. Because I knew that there was a reason, and all that reasons came to fruition. So I think what you'll see is now by me running, it puts me back in the national spotlight, which the media has done one thing. They don't want me out there talking about Jesus. So the way to do that, you just don't call the guy. You just don't even attack him anymore, right?
Wow.
They just don't attack. But now since I'm running, they have to talk to me. It's kind of a thing, If you're running for governor and Minnesota's in the public eye, but but to an extent, you're not seeing me. You don't see Fox calling me to interview me, do you? I got a thing for Fox. I'm really upset with that. I always say in my show, Lindell TV, which I have my network, I would do my show and I would say, in the old days, at the end of the night, we'd go, these lines would come across, like, and there would just be lines there. I would go like this. I go, let's see what Fox has to say about that.
Wow.
But but that's where that's at. I think it's having that platform, because once you're out there, they can ask you a question. Mike, you're down by 6 points. Did you hear about Jesus? You know what I mean? Yeah. It gives you that.
That's awesome.
So
I love that. What this reminds me of, and would you ever come back on here?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much, man. Honestly, what an
We'll give you updates. We'll give you updates.
Yeah. I can't, honestly, my mouth is just, I'm just like, I could listen to you for another 3 hours, but I know you have some things you have to do, but.
A deposition of all things. I just keep getting attacked. People say, here's where I'm doing the right thing, everybody, where you're on the right path. When Donald Trump won the election in 2024, all the media was down at the right down up the road here. And I went in there at 2:30 in the morning, and they all are coming in to attack. They go, well, Mike, now that your friend won, was this election stolen? I said, you guys know me. I said, this wasn't about that or whatever. It's about getting the paper ballots hand counted. And I said, we get secure elections for all of you. I don't trust any election ever done with a computer. That's just it. Yeah. And I was hoping that the left would come out and say, let's look at those machines and see if there was something going on because he won. Isn't that strike you weird that nobody did that?
Yeah.
Think about that. That's their way to steal elections, or they would be out there screaming about it.
Right.
And the person I'm running against in Minnesota, Amy Klobuchar, if you all watch the movie Kill Chain, she was the #1 spokesman for the Democrats, saying, we've got to get rid of the machines. And she named them, and she never got sued. So here am I going on a deposition today, another one. And
that's what the deposition
I do it all. So, I love deposition. Now, I did swear at one. I said the A word once, and that went nationwide because they leaked it. And they go, here's this Christian, and he said this word. But it backfired on them. They're going to the public, Mike must really be mad because he never swears, and I was bad. So
you remind me of a scripture, and it is Hebrews 13, 20, and 21, and it's my favorite. They're going to laugh at me because I always say it. The God of peace, who raised Christ from the dead, that good shepherd of the sheep, through the shedding of blood for the everlasting covenant, makes you perfect and doing a good work.
Right on.
Him working through you, which is well-pleasing in his sight, to give him glory forever and ever. Amen.
Amen. Oh.
So if anybody out there is struggling with addiction, depression, anxiety, suicide, anything, if you're thinking about giving up, look at him.
Right on.
Don't give up. Don't give in. Get to Jesus.
And LindellRecoverynetwork.org is free.
Amen. There you have it. God bless you.
Always advertising, huh?
Yeah, no, that's awesome, man. Seriously? Do you got anything else?
Yeah. No, that was it. I just want everybody to keep the faith and know we're in the greatest time in history to be alive. and just spread the word. And if you have someone incorrigible out there, and say that won't change, you think it's hopeless. With God, all things are possible. You send them to that website. They're going to see others like them. Those are the hope matches. Are going to give them hope. They need hope. And I want everybody to keep hope. We haven't lost our nation, the American dream. And like I said, if I'm wrong, we go to heaven.
Yeah, right. Right.
That's it. Then you can have a peace. It's a peaceful thing having that. You're making up like that. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for watching, and remember, don't give up.
Don't give up.
Right on.
Hey, how you doing? We got Ham Smith here with Don't Give Up again. And we're still at Mar-a-Lago. I can't get over this. What a merciful and awesome God we serve. If you would have told me a year ago, I'd be sitting with my dad at the president's house, just getting done an interview with Mike Lindell. Dad, what do you think?
God's good. The theme of the whole day, as we've been talking with Mike and everyone we've talked to today, is divine appointment. And our footsteps are ordered. I believe God has a plan and a purpose for everybody that's listening to this broadcast. But we're living in a time when God's Spirit is being poured about all flesh around this country. And as tough and as hard as it may seem for you, it's a perfect season to surrender to God's plan and purpose for your life. It is a privilege to be here with my son and everyone to see what God is doing. And to the extent He'll take you to, there's no limits, is what I want to tell you. If you'll surrender your will to His will, God will open doors. And I pray that if anybody's listening to this broadcast, the theme of this podcast is don't give up. In Hebrews 10, it says, casting not away, don't give up your confidence in God, where there is great recompense of reward. But it tells us that we have need of patience, that after we have done the will of God, we will receive His promises. And it tells us for just a little while, he that shall come, he will come and will not tarry, but the just shall live by faith. If any man would draw back into sin, that old fleshly attitude, that old way of doing things, it says that my soul should have no pleasure in them. But I'm confident today, there's people listening that want to give up, but don't give up, because Jesus Christ, the living Son of God, is soon to return. Now faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. God bless.
There you have it. My pastor, my father, Eddie Smith, here at Mar-a-Lago. Don't give up. God hasn't given up on you.
See that?
What do you say, Bob?
Man, what a time we had. I love this. Amen. Praise God. Look what He can do. Don't give up. He has to tell me every time. Don't give up.